unofficial beginning. Okay, all right. Welcome, hello, and welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Really exciting to welcome Peter Burzyński to celebrate this wonderful new book, A Year Alone Inside of Woodland Pattern. Woo! Along with Karl Gartung. So it's just a Woodland Pattern party all around. I appreciate you joining us. I'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement by acknowledging that in Milwaukee we live and work on traditional Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee homelands along the southwest shores of Michigami, part of North America's largest system of freshwater lakes where the Milwaukee, Menominee, and Kinnickinnic rivers meet, and the people of Wisconsin sovereign Anishinaabe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Oneida, and Mohican nations remain present. We further acknowledge the grave evil colonialism introduced to these lands through genocide as well as slavery, but also via racist and xenophobic beliefs, laws, and practices that continue to inflict harm upon Black, brown, and indigenous lives. We honor those who have lived and who do live now at these intersections of identity and experience and are committed to the active dismantling of white supremacy. Thanks again so much to everybody, to Karl, to Peter, to all of you here and all of you out there. We have copies of Peter's new book for sale at the front, beautifully designed and printed by Johnny and Alice at Adjunct Press. Woo! So please visit us up there. We also have copies of Karl's wonderful collection, Now That Memory Has Become So Important. Peter will not be selling you books tonight. He's taking the night off. So you'll have to settle for me, or if you're lucky, Marla or Alexa. But so just to let you know that. Heads up. What's it? Yeah. A couple of things that are coming up worth mentioning. So this Friday, we're going to welcome back Alash after a long time of not hosting them here. They used to be here about every year. Unfortunately, so I wanted to bring it up. Now I'm going to tell you the bad news. It's the in-person tickets are sold out, but we are going to live stream it so you can catch them online via Crowdcast. That's Friday night at 7 p.m. And next weekend, Friday, March 25th and Saturday, March 26th, we are thrilled to be hosting a Jewish Literary Sabbath, a mini symposium. And that's going to be with Lisa Fishman, Louis Friedman, Adina Karasik, Natalie Lylan, Eugene Ostashevsky, Ariel Resnikoff, Robert Yerachmiel Snyderman, Marina Temkina, and Matvey Yankelevich. And so an incredible lineup of poets and humans, and this will take place off-site at the Bindery in Bayview, which is a beautiful spot where we'll host 2 days of events. So there are going to be readings Friday and Saturday evening, and then panel discussions Saturday morning and afternoon. So I hope you'll consider joining us for that. Registration is available online, both to join us in person at the Bindery or to tune in via Crowdcast. It will be live streamed as well, all of the events throughout the 2 days. So talk to us more about that if you'd like, or visit our website for more information and for the full schedule. And so much more beyond that, but those two things in particular are going to be pretty amazing. Okay, with all that said, let's get to the reading. Excited to have Karl kicking things off. Karl Gartung is the author of Now That Memory Has Become So Important. In 1976, he was hired to run a small press bookstore, Books Incorporated, here in Milwaukee, which he credits as the beginning of his serious apprenticeship to contemporary literature. In 1979, he was co-founder with Carl Jung and Ann Kingsbury of Woodland Pattern Book Center. Woo! At Woodland Pattern, he has been involved in the planning and presentation of hundreds of poetry readings, musical performances, art and book exhibitions, and other programs, which for a long time was in addition to his work as a union steward and delivery driver. For him, a central mystery is which really comes first, the place we live in and its history or its poetry. And I've heard Karl say on a few occasions, and maybe you have too, a variation of this phrase, I can't share what I know, I can only share what I'm learning. It's a statement that's definitely stuck with me, and also one that seems at the heart of Karl's poetics, as well as at the heart of what Woodland Pattern has been about for these many years. A sense of knowledge as fluid, always in motion, with a careful attention paid to language, to history, and to the not-so-simple process of being in the world. Through tessaraic lines, through repetition, reconfiguration, etymological and historical investigation, Karl shares a, quote, most intimate accumulation of measures that can be entered from many directions. Karl's writing reveals a deep knowledge of poetic lineage. Wanda Coleman once wrote of Karl's poetic knowledge as, quote, subtle and vast, saying of Karl that he knows, quote, more about poetry than I had forgotten. This shows through in Karl's writing, always as a mode of learning, of understanding the potential of poetry and language to inform our thinking, both individually and collectively. As Elizabeth Robinson notes, Karl is, quote, a modern-day seer who traverses his terrain with keenness and perseverance, knowing that the pain, tenderness, and even humor of poetry will suggest and keep available certain possibilities. It's a real pleasure to welcome Karl Gartung.
Is it okay if I take this one? Okay. Well, the war started. And I had this poem. I won't read you a whole lot out of the old book, but I had this poem. In words, war is not contained. In word, war is, but it cannot be contained. Victor, he carried that cancer home with him, an infection, caught fighting and in protest in any statement or metaphor. War. It seems obvious what stance we should take in the present circumstance, but I don't entirely trust it. And I really don't trust when people start talking about economic war because that's not it, you know. And so I worry about that. And I also worry that we're as subject to propaganda as anybody else. So it don't do any good, but you do anyway. What is more useless than a song? Gives heart as to only sing. The world is too much with us, late and soon. Soon the world, and late is too much with us. Much with the world, and soon us. Late too soon, soon much. The world is with us, or he'll hear old, late and soon, rising from the sea, spending, we lay waste, glimpses that would make little we see, that is ours given, a sordid boon, creed bears, the moon moves us not, howling at all hours for everything, out of tune. Out of tune, the world is howling at all hours, late and soon. So, let's see if I got this in the right order. We went to visit Thomas A. Clarke in Pittenweem, Scotland, and we went walking on the beach there. Overheard, underfoot, rustling waves, shards and shattered pottery, forms discarded, cup triangle, bowl smoothed edges, fine sea broken plate, hand drawn, glazed geometry, eye traced plant, the shingle lives whisper. So I'm from Kansas, every once in a while there's a fire in the spring that's set by lightning and so on. And we went back one time after near Mead Lake, Kansas. There had been this like 40,000 acre grass fire. Of course, the news media said that the fire had destroyed so much, so I wrote this. The grass is green, after all, against what fire, quote, destroyed, unquote, the hills in black ashes. The grass, quote, destroyed, unquote, is green, the hills, after all, in black against ashes. What fire? Grass. What fire destroyed ashes in black hills all against green? The grass springs green against black hills. Fire destroyed, after all, the ashes. Then we've been reading Reznikov lately, and this poem occurred one morning. This is one of those kind of strange things where the poem comes out whole without any, other than arranging the lines, not much mediation. What each blade of grass is not another blade of grass. Thinking critically is empirical, an effort to discover something like truth. Thinking, not an act of opposition, but something like tenderness, something like love. Okay, since it's kind of a woodland patterned evening here, woodland pattern was a term invented by a man, a non-native anthropologist, to identify the indigenous in a former relationship to the local landscape. And non-native, we wanted to find the indigenous in ourselves, which is not the same thing as to possess or be possessed, but to find and be. This is a statement, woodland pattern. The project is to make and keep an open door. Books in my childhood were embodied in the representation of a book that was the concrete front and a way in opening to the public library, with a door in the gutter. There I could discover books by their heft and title, Quiet Worlds, Not Quite. Our project was founded by Carl Jung and Tom Montag, though at least in Carl's case, our project, the one we grew into, was not the same. His was projective, and ours was what, not passive, would allow someone, a few someones, to enter and find a way. These were complementary objectives. We are in awe of and honored those like Carl by making them available to the street where one could happen in and discover them, and even themselves. Irritating and sad. Oh, here, let's do this. And now I have to find my spot. I wrote this whole little sequence for Carl. I dialed a one. This is back when you had the rotary dial, and when you were dialing long distance, it was a one. I dialed a one before your number. You're only 3 blocks away. Was that a mistake? Or was it really an indication of the possible distance grown between us? Or am I recognizing that it was there all along and too long put aside in favor of what stillness binds us? We have looked for ties which bind us to others, or were we simply seeking a community, separating us by implication from other men? How would we define that community, the terms of admission, unless would it be open or closed? Which case rejected? Finally, not a community if the ties that bind confine membership to two so distant. Breaking bread is a holy act, sometimes spoiled by petty grievance. Thinking how nights knew, well, Karl lived a couple blocks from us, and he was an all-nighter every night. And so when I would drive to work at 2 a.m, Karl's lights would be burning. Thinking how nights knew Karl's house lights, new books, burning in his absence, fresh house, old, past those endless books returning. Lights burn, he writes, turning night, ages to pages. Lights burn, poet, turn night, pages to ages. Poet writes, poet ages. Writes, lights burn, ages. Turning night, lights, pages. Burn, turning night, ages. Irritating and sad to discover once again that I am captive to a second-hand negative opinion of a poet for God's sake whom I admired with reservation, or suspicion. Was his opinion born of jealousy, perhaps disappointment that a poem or person couldn't measure up? And now, since he has died, I will never know, as if that were ever possible. And besides, that is pointless. Speculation, though quite probably he could have changed his mind as I would like to change mine. No longer captive as I remain to his definitely inaccessible and former opinions. So, Karl was the most amazing and knowledgeable person I've ever known. His Light and Dust website is like an encyclopedia of poetry, and as much as you can discover of it, as much as is still available. And and other than that, he was a genius, which I wasn't. So now we'll go to the domestic, and then I'll get out of Peter's way. For my cat, what's that you're trying to tell me? You speak some language I don't know. What's that you're trying to tell me? You speak some strange language I can't know, and I hope that is just some hunger and not real deep anger I can't know. Some details don't need to be shared. Who is home? Here home is. Here who is? Here whose home? Here is home. Who is home? Here whose where this is home. Who is home? Here who home is here is. Where who this home is here is home. Here whose home. Here is home, here, home, whose, who, home, who. Here is who, here, whose home is there. Home, home, home. Who hear this? Whose home? This is we read Susan Howe's The Midnight, And so in the spirit of the reading, I stole all of her lines, or not all of them, a few of them. Anyway, writing through Susan Howe. Thunder, third apparition, a child crowned with a tree in his hand. Macbeth, Act 4, Scene 1. But this flower is not the true flower, not yet. If what is present to the mind at one time is distinct from what is present in another, what is belief? Bird in the hand, worth two of its own emptiness. A double cowslip bears one flower out of another. Mind the hidden. Aconite and poppy, she said, lie still, sleep well. Orist are the forest. You of flock beginning twine, so must act extreme affection. Second sight, scribe not, arrow. Coming back, goodbye all, willow, quiet wood smoke. You and I are one orphan. We'll trace things. Other lights assist you. You tenant, haunt you, disinhabit. Could weave and read at once, when stealthy in shawl slumber. Ari, the escaped of you, kin to small scarp fact, forth the name November, reader of poetry this book, legend, familiar in legend, the arrow king and no king, no lies in its concentration, am arrived at upper memory, double play of double meaning, no lies in its concentration, change and all chance perilous, turn away obedient as chorus listening to chorus familiar. All that is and all that is, listen, map all that see. Are you looking at sea? Is memory, cradle, twice washed. These are pastimes, voice of evening half, style in one stray sitting. I approach sometime in plain, handmade rag wove costume, awry, and what I long for, array. I already did that. It's about time. The light shines in darkness which does not comprehend it. Lux and tenebris. Would work be wood, be word work? And then just a little few. 52 years just the other day for Anne. Waking, his hand touching her arm in bed as if it had always touched, as in a dream. That's an expert from that I'm trying to figure out. I'm going to do that one again. That's an excerpt from that I'm trying to figure out. In those days, we learned a lingering goodbye meant higher phone bills. Burnt the pan. You say, well, even so, it still holds water. Hard to defend against argument you don't know exists. A little longer together here, ashes linger. Live, love, a little wonder. So, when I read Peter's book, I was amazed. When I first got hired to run Books Incorporated downtown, they were in the middle of street construction on Water Street, and that had its benefits and its deficits. One was the deficit was, of course, that the street was completely blocked off for a year and a half, and so nobody could get to the store. Benefits were that in the evenings I could gather cobblestones to take home, and I got to read. And that's, so one afternoon there, I sat down and read Lorraine Niedecker, and I introduced myself to Reznikov and Oppen and Bunning and Pound and so on. I already knew Williams. But I mean, I knew something of it. But that whole idea of isolation in a bookstore is appealing to me. And when Peter made a book of it, it seemed like we might be coming home. So I'll let the introduction happen now.
Thank you so much, Carl. That was great. And I guess the introduction kind of already happened, but here's this other introduction. Peter Burzyński earned a PhD in creative writing at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. He holds a BA from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, an MFA in poetry from the New School, and an MA in Polish literature from Columbia University. He works as the book center manager at Woodland Pattern Book Center here in Milwaukee. He's the translator of Martyna Buliżańska's This Is My Earth, and the author of A Year Alone Inside of Woodland Pattern. In between his studies, he has worked as a chef in New York City and Milwaukee. His poetry has appeared in many, many places. And he is the son of immigrants who call him on the phone every day. In A Year Alone Inside of Woodland Pattern, Peter wanders, quote, this organized mess of retired trees, where, quote, the paper folds crisp with decades upon it. And in so doing, he reflects on the ways in which the life of this place carried on, even through the worst of the pandemic, as it has through many years, written on invoices, receipts, scraps of paper. It's a living document, a process and a product containing a rich variety of poetic modes, from devastating lyrical meditations to pickup lines and wonderfully and very characteristically corny jokes, along with a few confessions written in private and made very public. I have not forgotten about the sandwich you owe me, Peter. So, it's a document of this place and of that person, but also this book resonates with the anxieties, anger, and fear, quote, the pandemic's cruel spittle, as well as, and maybe more importantly, the humor and the care that characterized so much of the, quote, quarantimes. But I come back to all of the more personal anecdotes, the connections Peter continued to make, and the relationships grown even throughout a deeply troubling and isolating year. As I've returned to these deceptively breezy poems, I continue to be moved by the way in which, through the isolation, Peter remained connected, and in so doing reminds us that, quote, the true remedies have been community. It's a great pleasure to welcome Peter Burzyński.
Thanks so much, everybody. I'm so happy that you're all here. This is really wonderful. So some of you know a little bit about this project already, but I think I've realized its goal today. And being alone inside of Woodland Pattern for a little more than a year, I think it was 14 months, everyone else was working from home, doing very important work from home, keeping us alive and well. I was here with the books, sometimes making a mess that nobody would see. And then maybe see, but I think that the end goal has been fulfilled in that this space that was so empty for so long is now full again. And I'm so grateful for you for filling it. And Carl, you could never be in my way. You paved the way. So don't worry about that. Yeah. I've never been one for explaining poems much, so I'll just read. Though you'll have to excuse me. I mean, this is my first. It's a book, and it's a beautiful book, and so I'm going to do what so many people read with popular fiction, and begin with the last page. I want to read the acknowledgements, if you humor me for a moment, okay? Thank you to my family. Without you, none of this is possible or has any meaning. Dear friends, thank you for holding my heavy up. To my friends and coworkers at Woodland Pattern, thank you for making this pattern endure. And I should say thank you to our volunteers as well. I'm so grateful that so many of you have showed up tonight. Some of you came as far from Chicago to be here, and it means a lot to me. Of course, much gratitude to Adjunct Press for bringing this book into the world. And on to my teachers. Thank you, Valerie Stewart, Dan Martin, Serena Pondram, Helena Filipovich, Kevin Gonzalez, Ahmad Jamal Johnson, David Lehman, Jennifer Michael Hecht, Mark Bibbins, Anna Freilich Zions, Rebecca Dunham, Brenda Cardenas, Kimberly Blazer, Mauricio Kilvine Guevara, for teaching me craft and for giving me hope that pages turn with purpose. And I hope some of you are out there in the internet world. If you're not, it's okay. I know you're in the universe. Thank you to all the poets with whom I've learned, especially Solon Battelle, Madison MacArthur, Franklin K.R. Klein, Sawar Masanat, Chris McAllister Williams, Tobias Ray, David Kruger, David Gibbs, Alexander Simmons, Lindsay Daigle, P.L. Aperti, Alex Dryden, Francesco Grinzianzo. Sorry, Frank, I just messed up your name. Just learned Frank's a mushroom farmer now. That's awesome. He worked for the Authors Guild, but now he's a mushroom farmer. Hey, Frank. Maya Bierbauer, Katrin Thompson, Chelsea Wynn, Matthew Yeager, Jared Joseph, and Angela Voris Hills. You have no idea how much the world means to me when I shake it, and you all fall out somewhere near to me. And lastly, I have to thank the cats. To Mish, Tadeusz, Wisława, and Czesław, your companionship and help is as important as of those poets who inspired your names. To Krufka, for black ears perked in the middle of the night, thank you. Sleep well, dear friend. Just give me a moment. So to begin the book, again with another acknowledgement for Anne E. Kingsbury. Generations are indebted to you for making a pattern that would fit inside of so many hearts. Thank you. You are beyond incredible. And yes, your name is still on the credit card. March 15th, 2019. I started working at this cool literary nonprofit book center I'd been going to for 16 years and volunteering at for maybe 5. It's called Woodland Pattern. It's like an organized mess of retired trees. Newly PhD'd, I finally had vision insurance I didn't need. Come on in. We've got a fresh case of bluettes. It's a sign I made. I'm really proud of it. On the sandwich board. Broadside chests. My narrows become broad. The paper folds crisp with decades upon it. How much of this dust is Robert Duncan's? How much is Leslie Marmon Silko silk? Maybe Bersenberger's breath caught in the air. Nathaniel Mackey's Udra and jazz echoing the empty gallery. Making the U. Orlandist helped me discover some things about myself I didn't know, like how impatient I can be with the wind and the turning of leaves, and how important it is to breathe, to wait. He also helped me make some new shelves, a plywood and glass cinder shrine to YA and music and art and drama and haiku and haiku and haiku. I suppose this poem is too long. So, dates frame this project. So, March 15th, 2019 was the day I began working here. And this next poem, March 15th, 2020, is my 1-year anniversary of working here. March 15th, 2020. Covidity in the city, panic in the disco, cats in the cradle, the pandemic's cruel spittle is unleashed and the bookstore closes for browsing. I have worked here exactly a year. The Times, an erasure against anxiety. Woodland Pattern's inaugural weekly prompt against anxiety. Live. Dated as we are being urged past the right now of right now by asking labor to hold off releasing limits, let's refrain from the soon. Existing could be unveiled as flowers bloom. We must rescue many talks. Face time, more generous talks. Continue reading. Thanks for reading. Stones are elsewhere. Profess the people's movement. Gatherings attempt to keep our spirits and win. Evenings applaud as a show of defiance. Tangled rivers bolster culture. Continue reading. Here's what it was like easing the precise public sonorous refrain of art. Our homes will grow. Art, even a single ounce, is a welcome recommendation. We require a new place to exist, persist, continue reading. Out of the mind's cast iron pans, first ready with crackling conversation, the five-sided thoughts wrestle. Dearest rocket, stay longer. Continue reading. A dwindling box can be extraordinary. Please produce, equip, and continue reading. Stark, we ear each other. This project is urgent. Articipation. Would people afford to not make art? We have to move every barrier and not exaggerate the potential of known drugs. The true remedies have been community. Continue reading. It is important to give hope. It is important to hope. My year alone inside of Woodland Pattern. Well, I'm not always alone. Sometimes Laureen is here, watching. But no one is ever truly alone. True. Nick comes in once a week to help. He has an art about him, calm and sharp as a steady fall gust tangled in the clouds of tomorrow. What goes UPS? For Jenny Gropp and Laura Solomon. Thank you for ensuring we survive and thrive. What goes ups must be delivered to our alternate address. Book deliveries are like new liver deliveries. My life depends on it. A gassy leak below my chair. I mean, it's a Peter reading. There's going to be farts somewhere. One day, during COVIDity, a little after I returned to the store, alone, after quarantines, the Batcave trademark smelled like an exquisite corpse of an egg salad sandwich from the fancy grocery store that uses shallots was left out in the hot kind of rain and then stapled to the walls. Gas. We could have exploded. But instead, we built a new website and an online store. You should visit https://woodlandpatternbookcenter.com and buy this book again. Zoom meeting 8/25/20. Maybe we can change the end times. Marla Jo Sandvik, art director. I'll get you that sandwich, Mike, I promise. I should read the poem. This is just to say, I still owe Mike a sandwich. He probably forgot by now. Good thing that he'll never know. It's quiet today. The roof is leaking onto the vitrine with the tarot card show display. Nowhere else but here and now could you make a bold new sentence like that. It's leaking over there. In case you want to make a donation. Don't tell Anne, but Karl is going to stop by today. He's going to buy too many books. And I figured I'd give you this one so he doesn't have to. So, this next poem's kind of serious, and it's one of the few poems I think I cheated on this one. I didn't actually write this. I wrote this before the year alone. But it keeps coming up, and it was part of the year alone, and defined a lot of those quarantines for a lot of us, and sadly still defines our history and our narratives, which was originally published in the chapbook put out by Angie Trudell Vasquez and Peggy Rosca for Dontre Hamilton. 84 after many, after Ferguson's, Minneapolis's, and Racine's, for Dontre Hamilton. History repeats itself, history repeats itself, history repeats itself, his story repeats itself, his story repeats itself, his story repeats itself, his story repeats, his story repeats, his story repeats, his story, his story, his story, repeats, 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 his self. Not knowing those who died, the difference is indifference. Some are guilty, all are responsible. I do not look at slaughter lightly. I will not refuse politely. I take what is given. Most offer lies and / justice. Most of us have dirt underneath our fingernails. New November. The rain was really cold, but then again, I smell like spring. But I am a sausage. The autumnal winds wreck my tremendous head like rain pardons no one. All right, here's another sandwich board I made. I'm too proud of it. at the Woodland Patterns for Chuck Stapleton and Kathy Cunningham. Plaid, argyle, polka dot, why not try a woodland pattern? Marketing genius. God damn. If I could ever give someone what my parents gave me, I would never recover. Vicky is pretty fucking cool. She delivers the mail and has for longer than I have been here. I bought a whole plastic pumpkin's worth of Halloween candy just for her. Can't read all of it. You gotta, let's skip some things here. A gilded lining. I'm so baroque, my poverty has frills, my poetry trills, and baby, oh baby, I got stanzas for a baker's dozens of dusted dark clouds stretched golden on an endless sky of anxiety. Oh, I got stanzas like I got bills. DeFleet Farm for R.S. Dream. Darren, I'm sorry, Raymond. I know you're watching. What's good for the Michigoose is good for the Michigander. Forbidden fruit snacks. Our education director, Alexa, forbade me from snagging more leftover Pringles and fruit snacks from the poetry camp boxes. It was virtual this past year, Zoom camp. Those kids poemed and poeted so well. Don't tell Alexa I ate the chips. I ate the chips. I ate the chips. They were so crisp, so delicious. The politeness of terror. I began dreaming about an American carnival in which I was an overweight strongman waging battle with other more or less over-something strongmen in an effort to pay off a non-specific medical expense and a non-specific business/war endeavor of that America's American president. And not unlike in our own world, I woke up in a measured terror. My breath was taken and I was afraid of the cracking sepia documentary that would slow fade ajar before me when shutters blinked and clicked and I woke up, because not waking up in a field half sandwich of panic politely skewered with javelins neatly frilled and colorful at each end was a different kind of terror I could not afford. I could not afford to avoid terror of labor, as labor was my capital, and I, as the child of immigrants, was programmed to the deepest deep dish of a television remote's controls default settings of the heavy orbit of cast iron education clad in appropriately laced drapes of sheer platinum, elbow pads costing a Judas's worth of silver only to fold and humbly display with a dim, dissipating cloud of pride the pieces of finely pressed paper more easily torn than aluminum after and mostly during an unending dance of exquisite, requisite, onerous, miscellaneous, superstitious, excrementous, ballet-like labor for which the breathless courtesy of othered bodies is exemplified, measured, and extracted by the invisible manufacture of teeth, barely yet bigly maintained, polished and entombed by the relative distraught polka, assiduous rasquache rumba, and or tumescent tango of minimal wealth brought by the very maximum securely earned labor and diligent service to the gilded crown of deliriously unburdened bodies to whom they must smile. We have kept this our secret until now. Like many immigrant families, we thought the carnival was just a machine cranking the clock's limbs homeward. We thought the carnival was for the good of the troop. the good of the team. November 1st, 1996. This is the day I begin the family busyness. I am 10 and so full of dreams. Today I am so tired. My crooked right hand's fingers bent from 10,000 or more pierogi seams. March 15th, 2020. Is that a typo? Yeah? Oh, shoot. That's an important one, too. March 15th, 2021. I'll correct your copies if you come visit me. My 2-year work anniversary, and I have lived a year alone inside of Woodland Pattern. The only place in which I've ever wanted to be so alone. And now that it's past March 15th, 2022, do I have time to read you some poems not from this book? Is that okay? Is everyone still okay? Like, it's not too much poetry for you? Fair. I mean, maybe there is an overstock, but just kidding. Oh. All right. Someone get this guy off the stage. So, I like you, a lot of my thoughts turn to the war in Eastern Europe right now. My family on my father's side, and my father who's here, thank him for being here. I'm very grateful. Part of them originate in a place that used to be called Voe, and it doesn't exist anymore. It's flattened, destroyed, and it's now part of what is present-day Ukraine. And not just because of personal connections and things like that, but truly horrified by what I've been seeing lately happening there. So I'll read from my other 2 manuscripts, which do talk a lot about Eastern European poetry and poetics and traditions and things like that. And anyway. A short lesson in Eastern European history. The epitaph reads, "Dear anybody, it's not that I'm afraid of death. I only fear tangles, the intangible untangled, a nation rectangled. Concentrate, my dear triangle, an anthem bedraggled. What a peacock, I am indeed an empty trombone, unnatural laughter, dancing bears, an unknown genus, recorked vodka, the intangible untangled. A young genius, I was a proud horn player's plunger, wanting for a home, a whole symphony of Slavonic swoon, an empty trombone of laughter. My dear anybody, I can't define how, but I feel elegant, like a tombstone. What a word to howl, peacock plume, a plunger longing for a home, to stop and sob, how I'd sob, a lost map, a torn leaf, in Polish daisy could mean 100 short, stokrotko, how I love you. I guess elegance is a broken chessboard, a life spent wasted is not wasted on me. I once knew how to pronounce death in Polish, but soon after all words in Polish came to mean death. Bedraggled dragon, guard the castle, imposter, darling jester, come be wasted in our waste. Bring your horn, red banner, damn November. I'm afraid it's death, maybe laughter. I think that's a Villanelle-ish. I don't know. And thanks, Mike, for making these copies. I'm sorry that everything is so scrunched together. I was trying to save paper, but you'll know when I'm moving on to a different poem, though. I have a feeling. And this one I wrote because the words for war and fault are very similar in these three languages, and they move from east to center, or excuse me, from west to center to east. War, fault, wojna, wina, wojna, wojna, wina, wojna, wojna, wina, wojna. Twoja wina, wasza wina, twoja wina, twoja wina, wasza wina, twoja wina, twoja wina, wasza wina, twoja wina. In a land to another where noon is also midnight, bombs fall and no one sees themselves dying. Surf, Sunrise, Sans Serif, based on Jan Mateko's painting, The Battle of Ratzowica, in the National Museum at Krakow. If I had 8 fingers, I'd have eaten Mickiewicz's bigos and cried. I'd have enjoyed the exoskeletons of fireworks past. I'd take everything back if I couldn't. Instead, there was a call to say something, and I stood back, eye away from war, armchair quartered back some flour into the air, only so I could catch the grains in my own pale hands. If I had been more reckless with my ego, perhaps I could have one day held elected office. But instead, I do this, bully for me. Please excuse my fatal flaws. The reciprocating saw of my indulgent The reciprocating saw indulgent of my own thoughts, the myopic indigence of spent charm, the verbicide of other people's strife, countless other things. I could keep apologizing, or I could do better. Kosciuszko led a band of farmers, peasants armed with scythes, wearing a ratted peasant's wool, though he was born for epaulets and proper steel. Another one of my heroes wrote poems and watched as the soldiers went to war and passed, spitting at his feet. 2 guitars, a Roma song. 1. North Indian Slavs know a song that is told somewhere along the banks of the Vistula as their waters spill into the Buk, eventually into the Dnieper, into Chernobyl and back. 2. There is a special brand of sadness that creeps in. It has the scent of cold rain cracking the sidewalk's unparalleled parallels. A tiny Cossack defends his borders as ardently as his oppressors rename them. There are names like Kolya, Genya, Dima, and others like Marisha, Stasha, Irena. Surzik cuts out our tongues like vodka cuts out our tongues, like it cuts blackberries down outside a train station overgrowth somewhere that is not really anywhere but is a stop on the way to Smolensk. 3. There is a forest here, there is a forest there. You can find buttons among the birch peels. You can ask the trees in whom they believe. You can ask them the best ways to winter. The poppies run red and the music dies. If you turn your ear out on its left side, you can hear some patient words on avoiding the worst. A fractured atlas. Southwest Asia is the cradle of civilization. Eastern Europe is civilization's bowl of grain. Both are repeatedly its grave. Finis Polone. Grow more gophers. Are they necessary? What is your newest necessity? Is it blue? I know the way you've spent sorrow isn't enough to split lungs into doves. Flutter, Fortinbras, look at this, look. My head is wrapped in foil, aluminum, tin, twine, around tungsten. It's hard to be your friend. I can't tell you all of my habits because you're no priest. Resist confession, omit oppression, you'd be wise. There are 7 different accounts of Eastern European history. Please tell me which invader is quainter than the Reich. Polonius plots unwise, Polonia plots graves, gravel over stone, stone over gravel. Is it mass or private? No plots. They took it away. We're full. How many borders will make us concise? And for the two poem warning, a break from the war and just like something I just noticed about myself when I couldn't sleep the other day. A merry decline. Dreams become rigid. Dialogues were replaced with tables and equations that no one could solve, perhaps Deuteronomies or Decalogues. Everything was remade to be formal, a dance where none could think, all would fail constantly. The cha-cha of ungrateful hollow losing. It was nerves, I say. It might have been guts, or aging, or coming to terms with limits, they said. Determined to deteriorate, I didn't like a bit of it. Each new day grinding towards a painful foreclosure, a resignation of thought. Is this my Mardi Gras of forever collapse? Resolve fled, and the invisible claw marks of indifference clung to the staleness of breakfast air. All farts and coffee as I remember it, lingering yet fresh, like the cruelty of another dawn. Still never enough fuel to be able to sate the onward. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. This has really meant a lot to me. Before I read this last poem, I'll say that one of my favorite parts of, having meetings like Woodland Pattern is the community, like the food we share. And I realize we're not quite at a place where we can eat in Woodland Pattern, so I made some, there's like these little candy flowers. I didn't make them, I just arranged them, just like little beautiful diabetes on a plate. So take one if you'd like, as you leave, as my gift to you for being here, and thanks for hanging with me. It's so great. As much fun as it was to be alone inside of Woodland Pattern, it's so great to be not alone in Woodland Pattern. Fields of flame. I'm tattered. The droops of my eyes fold clumsy over the crease of my powder blue mask like old paper waiting to die. I look to the east and the motors of history are ticking again, humming, brass coils flick with the electricity of dominance. Murder is murder, says murder. What neighbors are neighbors? 1,000 years of brothershed. And ever since and ever after, our soils mineralized with a heavy iron of common blood. Somewhere caught between the seas, a sack of Solon potatoes spills out, and no one has the metal to pick them up. The sky blotted with a regiment of bundled flames. Soon it'll be time to plant beetroot. The borscht we make are almost as similar as the tongues we use to slurp them. What will we harvest this year when all we've sown are bombs? Thank you, everyone.
translator, thank you so much. That was fantastic. Karl, again, thanks to all of you for being here. Don't forget to help yourself to some treats, and also help yourself to some books in exchange for money. And then, and it's good to see you all, and I look forward to seeing you again. Good night.